Thank you for watching Conscious Consumer Network. The live stream broadcast is free to view. You can pause and rewind live broadcasts to catch up, or view shows at a later date by accessing our free archives of all shows. Check out our broadcast guide to see what's on. You can show your support by donating to our network support fund. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter for updates. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Joe Atwill with Jan Irvin. We're the co-hosts of UnSpun. This is episode 51 in the series. And we were hoping to have, and may still have, another individual to discuss the Summer of Love, the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the debacle, the MKULTRA project that hit fruition around 67, and they refer to it as Summer of Love. But unfortunately, we've had technical problems, and Steve Outtrim has not been able to hook up. So we're going to perhaps cover that subject later in the show if Steve can rejoin us. And we're going to do the show backwards. We were going to cover this new law that Obama has signed, which restricts or gives government power to restrict basically freedom of expression over the internet. So
limits the First Amendment.
Exactly right. So Jan, can you help describe what Obama has signed into law and also help people understand what it means?
Well, it's H.R. 6393, Intelligence Authorization Act for fiscal year 2017. And in it, the bill apparently targets quote-unquote fake news, which is a ploy to address alternative media, to shut down alternative media, and to squelch people exposing, all of the Pizzagate and everything else that has been coming to light. And there has been even new research on that coming to light that you, in fact, sent me this morning, Joe, on the whole Pizzagate thing and the layout of Washington, D.C. I have posted that to my Facebook page about the layout of Washington, D.C. around Comet, ping pong, etc. makes a pentagram. And in fact, let me just pull this up and I'll just show the audience this. But so what they're trying to do is essentially limit freedom of speech and people investigating this whole thing. And here we go. So this is, this website that you had sent me this morning, Joe. This guy is breaking down all of the symbolism in the Washington, D.C. area based off of Scott Onstott's work, whom I had on the show several years ago. And so he shows how each one of these points is essentially a children's facility on the upside down pentagram with, actually this one is the White House one, and there's another one for ping pong pizza here that he shows. But he shows how the White House lays out one, how another lays out. He gives Manly P. Hall's description here. But anyway, so this H.R. 6393, they are essentially trying to shut down people's and control free speech on the internet. It's a direct attack on free speech. And then what the law states is, anybody using fake news, etc. So they use these fake terms that, of course, the intelligence community just created, and then they have this bill ready to roll out after they have the fake shooting and all of this stuff to get everybody revved up about it. And, so then they can lay this stuff out before the public. And, but the thing is we've shown repeatedly that the NDAA, I think is what it was, that Obama just reversed recently, allows the U.S. government to propagandize the American people, et cetera. So all of this, essentially, for instance, with what the bill apparently states, if I'm understanding it correctly, is that, someone who was on the campaign trail like Hillary lying about everything, that's fake news. She could be arrested by that. So it would stop even presidential candidates, and statements like Obama made the other day that he could have easily won a third term. So, this kind of propaganda from the government itself has to stop. And then, the government is going to have to be held accountable for its own fake news. And, so it's ironic that they get rid of one propaganda law one week, and then they put in, a week later, a law about the people using quote unquote fake news while they're clearly propagandizing the people and distort, not one single mainstream news outlet to date that I have seen has even addressed a single point in the Pizzagate evidence.
Right, and they haven't done any refuting of the premises that people have drawn conclusions from concerning the Pizzagate situation. They have talked, at least some of the proponents for the government have talked about it being debunked, but that's all they say is that it's been debunked.
Yeah.
Whenever they're asked,
well, Snopes, they wrote an article just saying it was debunked, and so therefore, because Snopes said so, that's all that you need,
Right. So what you've got is a situation where basically you're just seeing a very mature kind of mind control, where they now really don't even have to back up the sophistry with a clever argument. They can just go straight to the instruction for the sheep. They're saying it's debunked, so you'll believe it's been debunked. There is absolutely nothing that has been debunked. I mean, if you just look at the one piece of sophistry that I have seen over and over again is they exaggerate the claims to make them seem absurd. In other words, they go straw man. They say, well, people are claiming that Hillary Clinton ran a pedophile sex trafficking ring out of a pizza shop, right? So that's how it's reduced to an absurdity. When of course no one has ever made that claim. That's just how they want to characterize, the way that people have come to Pizzagate. So it's but anyway, getting back to the legislation, it's troubling because it is so clearly directed, in my opinion, against the First Amendment. Now, I just wanted, before I go any further on this, I just want to say, I've only scanned it. It's a kind of a lengthy monster, and I can't really see exactly how it's structured. And laws like this tend to need to be litigated before you can really see exactly how draconian it's going to be. You have to have some kind of relationship between the law and the judicial process. But what is clear is that they're moving in the direction of shutting down the internet. And we've talked about this many times. We know the reason for it. Cass Sunstein, many years ago, said that, look, with all these conspiracy theories, how can democracy exist? Well, frankly, they can't, because when democracy has been taken over by a small group that is using sophistry and mind control in order to basically enslave the population, well, if that kind of democracy wants to go on, you can't have the people starting to generate their own understanding of reality and things like that, because
well, sure. I mean, if you using the first page of Edward Bernays' book Propaganda as the foundation of what they define as democracy, and then of course Cass Sunstein is a propagandist and he wrote the book Nudge, their stuff doesn't work that way. I'm just, what is it? The Organized Habits. I'm just looking for that Edward Bernays quote.
Yeah, I mean, so we just, when you look at Obama signing this thing into law, I noticed, he does it on Christmas Eve. That's the telltale sign. That's when the Federal Reserve was brought into effect. They always do the most malicious kind of thing under the cover of some other activity, so that no one is there, no one's going to vet it. The bill is
let me just read this so that we can understand, Cass Sunstein's point before you go on there, Joe.
Yeah.
The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government in which the true ruling power of our country, or which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested largely by men we have never heard of. This is the logical result of the way in which our democratic society is organized. Vast numbers of human beings must cooperate in this manner if they are to live together as a smoothly functioning society. In almost every aspect of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind. And this is the first page of propaganda. And, so when we see this, we see Cass Sunstein's point, because we have all of these criminals. Of course, Cass Sunstein works with Obama in nudging the public along in the direction that they want, which is towards transhumanism, transsexualism, homosexuality, degradation, pedophilia, degradation of society. So this is the direction that they want to nudge people along to. And if people are aware of Cass Sunstein and Edward Bernays and, Walter Lippmann and how these others have ran this stuff, then, this method of so-called democracy becomes ineffectual, because the criminals can no longer maintain power.
Right. I mean, if the public knew that they were voting for individuals that were part of a process to enslave them, poison them, genocide them, and basically convert them into a low intelligent caste that would be both intellectual and sexual slaves to this small group of oligarchs, they probably would squeak. I mean, that would be my guess, is that if people understood that, then they wouldn't put up with it. And so when you see the power of the internet, the ability of the citizen researcher to organize as a group and thereby become more powerful, right? Individual researchers, against gigantic propaganda systems are always at a disadvantage, because for one thing, they're up against a secret society, and one that has organization and money and has, of course, the power of controlling the political system. So it's not a fair fight. However, when you start organizing these researchers into a group, well, for one thing, they can't any longer be pushed into accepting anything that's unreasonable, because as a collection, they're just too powerful. They just won't accept non sequitur. And if you look at the Pizzagate analysis and how it was found and how it got spread out and how it's now, even today, growing and growing and growing, you can see that there is a power that cannot be controlled by mind control techniques in the grouping of the citizen researcher. They're just, as a group, too clear-minded, too powerful. There's too much people who will not be intimidated by sophistry and by government authorities and things like that. I've been doing research into Albert Kinsey because of his
Alfred Kinsey.
Alfred Kinsey, yeah, because of his promotion of pedophilia. And I've really been amazed at the extent that the government worked with Kinsey, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the political class worked to create this bogus science that could be used to promote sexual depravity. And of course, pedophilia was, basically the gold standard of the sexual revolution of Kinsey. And so, in seeing this, I realized that today, if Kinsey had tried to bring that stuff out, it would have been torn to ribbons. There would have been enormous response from researchers, and they would have had a really hard time just giving the American public these concepts as scientific truth, because the internet citizen researchers stood up against it. So that's an example now of why, when you see Obama sign this thing into law, of what the problem they want to address is that they have to basically cut apart the capacity of the citizen researcher to, one, do collective information gathering and theory creation, and then two, stop them from communicating to the public. Anyone who wants to see what's going on with Pizzagate, just Google one of the shows that Jan and I have done on it, the videos, and then look over to the right at all of the associated videos. Jan, there are, I think it's probably well over 1,000 now that have been created. I mean, these are all different citizen researchers who are independently moved to be able to create information that goes out. Each one of them has some, group that follows them or they're in communication with, and it is growing because the evidence of there being the need for a real investigation into Pizzagate is quite clear. What is being suggested by the evidence is that there is real trafficking, real time, of children in the DC area. And so you're getting people who are morally offended, who are, have just a desire to protect children, are now really starting to feel kind of desperation, that they really want to reach out, they want to get something done. So anyway, sorry to be long-winded, but you can just see that we are really in a critical moment. We have a critical problem, absolute, code red problem, where now you're looking at the possibility of real trafficking, a pedophilia ring in our political system, similar to the one that was found in Brussels, similar to the one that Jimmy Savile was conducting with the
Aristotle, yeah,
in England, and then there's just a really, really strong case. So you need to have this situation investigated, and at the same time, the process by which the citizen can come up with information is being attacked, and the two are completely related. They're completely related, John. It's because of our research, but like by 1,000 people like us, the videos we put out, that they have the government and the secret society is saying, look, we got to stop this, because you can see it's like Cass Sunstein was right, that democracy, which includes the capacity for the oligarch class to have a pedophile sex slave traffic go on, that's what they mean by democracy. You can't have that system, right? When the citizen researcher stands up, when the citizen researcher does the work, gets the word out.
Yeah, or the kind of democracy that has the CIA running around the world selling drugs to kids and selling pornography and selling pedophilia and Satanism and all of this stuff. Yep. Creating LSD and counterculture movements and hippies and Grateful Dead and Doors and all of this stuff. Yeah, you're right. I mean, this kind of democracy that they've had in place for, the last 80 years or more, 100 years, really doesn't work when people are aware and active and studying the information, learning how to ask questions like who, what, where, when, why, and how, so that they can gather the information and come to real conclusions on it. Because, the system that's there now, they want people to follow what they're told. They want, the mainstream media is dying. And what this really is, in my opinion, is like a last-ditch effort to blow wind into its sails. Because if what they're down to 30% and falling by the day. If you have them out there trying to pass resolutions to ban alternative media like this show, then all they can do is, at this point, to save themselves, is to try to attack everyone else and to force them out to blow wind back into their own sails.
Yeah. The statistic you were citing was regarding the people who think the mainstream media is trustworthy.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Now it's under 30%, and the last data I got was under the very first time in history. It's absolutely collapsed. It was over 80%. Now it's under 30. Now, if it gets under 20, which at the current trajectory will happen, within the next year, you're into a situation where basically it's rock bottom because, 17% of Americans believe in Bigfoot.
Right.
So
Right. So then it becomes like those who read the Inquirer and the, checkout stand at the grocery store.
If it gets under 20%, if you see it even approach 20%, it's gone. And no one believes it. At that point, as a device for propaganda control, or excuse me, for mind control, oh boy, it's not going to be very powerful. So, they're going to try to control the alternative media, but the problem is that there's competition. Remember, when they set up CBS, the first TV station, with the great big all-seeing eye so that everyone knew that, hey, well, look, the Freemasons are in control here. Oh, boy, this is great. So
CBS.
Right. Yes, the BS. Well, anyway, so when you get, they set it up, but no one was paying attention. No one understood the secret society. No one understood they didn't understand what the eye meant. They thought, this is great. It's like an eye, no problem.
Yeah, doesn't peacock have a whole other symbolism that's similar as well?
Exactly. They all look. The whole thing has been a project tip to stern, as you will know. And so the thing is,
just to interject right there, people who want more information on this specific topic, watch my series with Dr. Hans Utter, The Secret History of FM Radio, and that covers all of this. And Frank Stanton, who founded CBS, I think it was Frank Stanton. Now I'm forgetting.
William Paley.
Here, let me see. Frank Stanton.
Yeah.
Princeton Radio Research Project, RAND Corporation, and then CBS Radio. And then CBS does the whole War of the Worlds thing that we exposed for Halloween last year. And they're tied in with, you've got William Paley there, Tavistock Institute. You've got Sumner Redstone. Sumner Redstone, of course, was U.S. Army, U.S. Department of Justice, was apparently involved with Police the Band, and also Black Entertainment Channel and MTV, which is interesting. He's also tied to Mossad. I could just show this on the screen. That might be a little bit easier there. But so we have, here's CBS. We have all of these guys. Here's Frank Stanton. Here's Edward Bernays. Well, we haven't spoken about him for a few minutes.
Yeah.
And then going into, John G. Fuller, who launched all of the UFO stuff and Incident at Exeter. He's the one that created the whole UFO encounter story that I exposed, and you and I did a show on it last year, or this year, actually, since there's a couple days left. But, this is just CBS, and then you have all of the others, but, they all have these intelligence connections and manipulation going on. Tavistock was behind the Macy conferences, which ties right back into MKUltra and all of these people. There's the Central Entertainment Agency right there. So the Central Entertainment Agency sees a real threat in the alternative media. And all of us are seeing heavy hits on the YouTube servers. Clearly, Google is throttling all of the alternative media shows. We're seeing like a drop at 3 or 4 fold in the last couple of months, Joe, just for this show. And, even if we push it out farther and harder, we see them making more and more efforts. I've actually seen YouTube numbers, no kidding, go backward on my YouTube channel for views. And I've seen them stick there for days and days when I know that several hundred people had watched it in that time. And, I've seen all of this kind of nonsense, and other people have seen it too. And, Google, YouTube fudging people's view counts, suppressing the material in searches and coming up with like material and all that. The Central Entertainment Agency, they do not want the alt media exposing themselves. They want to, create false media hubs that they're going to then promote and, maybe carry all the way to the White House and recent elections and stuff like that. And then those will be the new propaganda outlets,
Exactly right. That's exactly what we're up against.
For those who figured out what I was saying right there, and they can make the connection.
Yeah, I mean, Google, Facebook, Twitter, they
Well,
are.
I mean, even other big supposed alt media outlets that were suddenly, entering into the presidential debates and.
Reddit had an enormously complex and rich thread on Pizzagate. It's where it began, and that was just completely extracted. The owner of it just said, "Well, gosh, there's." He didn't say I'm being under pressure by the government to do this, but he did it. And so he said, well, you don't want to engage in witch hunts, which was just ironic given that the whole thing began with the spirit cooking of the witch Marina Abramovich, who was a witch. So not engaging in witch hunts seemed a little, kind of a poor idea at the time. But anyway, so yeah, we've got clear situation where you've got the internet has been already taken over to some extent by the creation of Google, Facebook, and Twitter, which are government-controlled, propaganda devices. People are used to going into these systems, and so it's one of the ways that they can control it. But in spite of that, there's just so many ways around the systems that people are used to. If you don't want to use Google, there are other systems. If you don't want to use Reddit, there are other systems. And there are people who are very good at creating systems, workarounds. I'm hoping that, the sophisticated skeptics that are coming out of the computer science departments will continue to make it impossible for the government to just shut down the communications, because the longer that stays open, the more likely we'll get to that critical mass where you have a number that just will have enough political punch that it can basically force the internet to stay open. I mean, really history is kind of hinged on this one moment. We have been under mind control, under fake history for hundreds of years, and the last 100 years since the Federal Reserve, they basically own the government. So, the oligarchs are unified. They control the media. They control the financial system. They own the government, but they don't own the internet. And the citizen researcher is starting to make inroads into the minds of the population. And we have a better case to make because so many people can see that, well, wait a second, I'm being poisoned. The Democratic elected representatives seem to be working with the banks, not with me. I'm poorer every year. My family's shattered. There's pornography anywhere. What the hell is going on? You see, they're skeptical. The population are skeptical. And so when the independent researcher comes forward and say, look, I've got a clearer understanding of reality than what, than what's being given to you, on CNN or on Fox News. I've got a better, more honest, more real way of understanding the world. Well, people are looking for that and they're open to that because the oligarchs can't have it both ways. They can't enslave us and then use the statement that, well, everything is great, right? You've got to trust us because America, the people hate you for having so many freedoms, for having so much wealth, for having the greatest country in the world. Well, wait a second. We're getting poorer every year. There's more and more restrictions on us every single month. We're not very happy. I think we're going to go look at these independent researchers, see what they have to say, you see? So that's why when I said it's like history is really kind of hinged at this moment. If the internet stays open, and I've said this before, you know that, if it stays open another couple of years, I honestly don't think they're going to be able to shut it off because I think the populations are waking up so fast now, so quickly, that I think it's really going to be tough to like put them down because they'll start to unify. The Pizzagate thing is a good example of this.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. I mean, just the way that the public got involved so quickly
Yeah.
shows is just a small window into what citizen action really can do with, the same weapon that DARPA released on us when it's turned on them and used to expose all of their criminal activity.
Yeah.
Because, when they released this weapon, they didn't intend on it, on the public being able to access all of the data and learn critical thinking and learn all of the, how to do the research and then be able to expose them for their own actions with it, and we see that with, unfortunately, Steve Outtrim is not on tonight. I'd hoped that he would be on, but fortunately, he's been able to expose a lot of that from his own position, working in the Bay Area in technology for years. So, yeah, they have a lot to hide and cover up there. Look at the whole Burning Man thing that we're
Yeah.
exposing. That's just
Yeah.
the tip of the iceberg, and it all connects. This is all these are all different views of the same pyramid, so to speak,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And you can see it with the Pizzagate thing. Hundreds of researchers, different points of truth, all being unified, all being exchanged. I mean, it's a powerful force. Some guy comes in with a little piece of sophistry. Good luck, buddy. You're going to get ripped to shreds. There are hundreds of people who understand logic and who have data points that they will like just go right up against them. So, and then there's no intimidation. The intimidation aspect of like, well, everyone believes in 911, because everyone else does. We're afraid to say anything. That doesn't happen in these kinds of communities. So that Sunstein is right, and their controlled democracy is that threat at this point. So I think one of the and I wonder, you made that point about they weren't expecting, I think, the degree that the citizen researcher would have influence. And I think you're right. I honestly think that they thought the mind control would be a lot simpler than it has been. I think that the nimbleness of the minds of the population has caught them slightly off guard, and they're trying to rework the system a little bit. I think that's why there's
hey, bring back the Grateful Dead, quick, get them out there,
right. So that's why you've got the Summer of Love being,
yeah, the Grateful Dead on tour again. You've got the promotion of LSD and the suggestogens all over the media again. You've got them, in Time and I mean, everywhere they're promoting them. I'm seeing this stuff popping up everywhere now. So, they're trying to redo the whole 60s movement, and they're feeling the pressure because alternative media shows like this one have,
waking up too many people. I mean,
woken up too many people and exposed so much of it, and once you see how it operates, then everyone can see the path to becoming, involved in investigating it themselves.
Right. So you can see how important this current point in time is in history, because they are going to have to, in order to maintain their system, they're going to have to ratchet up the mind control and the fascism dramatically in order to control the citizen researcher, because they don't have any choice. If it continues to go on, now that you've reached 30% of people trusting their propaganda system, that means that it is in crisis and basically it's doomed. So they have to come up with something else. And that's why I think you're going to see this heavy-handed stuff, the fascism is going to set in. But I wonder if they've waited too long. I mean, I'm always an optimist. I'm hoping that now with this number of people in a high degree of skepticism, that when they try this stuff, that people will see right through it and will basically work against it. And so we'll see. I think the Summer of Love is, it's pitiful. It just shows that, in my mind, that they really realize that they have miscalculated, and now they're going to have to recreate some of the the old-fashioned mind control stuff. And
Well,
that,
hey, Joe, it
Yeah.
goes back to the debate between Aldous Huxley and his student Eric Blair, George Orwell. Whether it was going to be Aldous's system,
yeah,
control the masses with barbiturates and hypnosis, and they're going to love their servitude, or if it was going to be like George Orwell's with cameras and force and total, submission. So,
yeah. But I think the problem is that the information when it gets out makes the slave less likely to accept things, because what happens is you get things like Pizzagate, where people realize what depravity is being leveled against them by the oligarchs. It isn't just, you have an inferior financial position. I mean, they're turning us into human, robots. With the autism, the dramatic increase of autism because of the chemicals that we're being forced to take, the vaccinations, and they're developing this Delta class, basically as the slave class. But people are waking up to this stuff, and so this has, in my opinion, led to this. They're regenerating the old Summer of Love themes to try to do a better mind control. But look, I was just going to say, folks, Jan will describe. We are going to be there because the first Summer of Love, was uncontested. You had.
Yeah, we're going to hire a bunch of hippies to stand out in the front of the park and hold up there. This is a CIA party. Welcome, everyone.
Exactly. Last time, when Kesey put out the acid test, when the Grateful Dead had the big Freemason Eye of Horus on their pamphlets, the people were defenseless. They had no idea what was happening to them. When the media started to support these bands and the drug taking with all these articles, which were never really very critical somehow, they always sort of saw, well, there was maybe kind of a spiritual thing, and there were just, no one was being arrested. Millions and millions of tabs of LSD were just demolishing a generation, and the public was defenseless. But when they bring out the next iteration, which I think is going to be rolled out with the Summer of Love, you're going to see people are going to contest it. And one group that will is right here at UnSpun. The indefatigable Jan Irvin, myself, and Steve Outtrim are going to come up with our own little video presentation. Hopefully, this is at least in the works.
50 years of flower power.
Yeah, and
something like that.
We're going to show the real Summer of Love.
The MKULTRA BN.
Yeah. so that and it'll have it'll be lots of fun and kind of a cartoony sort of thing that will help people understand through laughter that they were basically being taken to an enslaved place the first time with all of this sex, drugs, rock and roll, freedom nonsense. And now the second time, it's going to come out. They're going to come after us, and this time we're ready. This time the citizen researcher is going to go, oh, I don't know. Like when you read stuff, like the Psychedelic Gospel, this book that Dr. Jerry Brown comes out, people are going to go, I don't know. Is this sincere? Is this really?
Well,
they're going to ask the question. Whereas when you had when you had Kesey and the acid test, no one is really asking the question. But this time there will be some curiosity, and they're going to go, I don't know if this is sincere. I just don't know. We don't know if it's sincere. We know that the first one wasn't.
Yeah.
Now here comes.
Well, up.
Basic question.
The signal dropped on my end for a second there. It's back now.
Anyway, I mean, once they just ask the question, it's like propaganda is very fragile because the victim has to be giving trust to the person who is using the mind control against him.
Absolutely.
If you don't trust, if you just sit there, if you hold your ground and you go, I'm going to think about this. I'm going to try to see, what are the motivations, potential motivations, the people who are bringing this information to me? Is there something malicious that could be going on? All you have to do is just have that much balance. And all of this inflicted mind control that we've been suffering from. It just will go away because the propaganda won't work. You know, when 30% of the population is all that's left that think the mainstream media is trustworthy, man, we are right there. We are right at the point where we can actually have some change for the good and finally get democracy to be more effective for us.
Well, as far as mob rule goes, I mean, republic is probably a little better, you know.
Yeah. Well,
as far
of
as
course. But let's just get, first of all, let's just stop the mind control. You know, let's just do that.
I agree. All right. So what do we want to cover for the next 15 minutes? We've got, who knows, huh?
Who knows? Well, you know, the Summer of Love, the recreation of it is, you know, I think we've covered the fact. We think it's suspicious. The timing seems to be something that they're just doing because they're starting to lose the battle. Well, one thing I wanted to mention is that the sexual deprivation, you know, that occurred with the first Summer of Love, and now is basically into its, you know, fifth generation with Miley Cyrus. You have real, I mean, just absolute degeneracy that is visible, you know, basically in all of her shows.
Well, yeah, and she's so upset that Trump was elected that she's threatening to leave the country. You know what? Yeah. Good riddance.
Yeah, that's a real something we really miss her. But the fact is that, you know, pedophilia, which is being exposed with this Pizzagate analysis, is kind of one of the centerpieces. And I was just going to mention that I was, you know, working on a paper about the history of pedophilia as a political tool, and going back all the way to the East-West trading companies with Adam Smith and Jeremy Bentham. They were like the propagandists, this early version of propaganda, even pre Bernays, and they were secret society members, and they were commissioned to write these propaganda pieces to mind control the public. But what you know, what came out of it was a series of books, and one of them was In Defense of Pederasty, right? And this is very important. Yeah, that's the Panopticon. That's
sure. Yeah, he would basically wanted to create a system where they could, you know, keep an eye on everyone and keep them in line because of the exposure.
Yeah, well,
with this central type system here where everybody's exposed and nobody gets any privacy. That's essentially, you know, what their version of the internet is.
Exactly right. And also, I mean, this is a gearbox. See, they're going to put you in the center of it.
Sorry, I'll put it back here.
You're a slave inside this gearbox.
Well, the center point would be your, you know, like the watchtower, your guard or whatever, your Illuminati eye. And then you have a view of this, you know, of everything around, and then
you're made to move the gears around to create energy for the oligarchs. And in Bentham's world, one of the categories that he was saying was going to, yeah, there you have it. That one of the categories he was talking about was just the children of poor people. You didn't have to have any crime or anything. Just if you were poor and you were out of money. The government would take you in and put you in the Panopticon, and then you'd start to push the gearbox, and that would be what little kids would be doing, according to Bentham's world. Now, at the same time, he wrote In Defense of Pederasty. That was the other, you know, one of his tomes. And so what you have is this early interest in the part of the oligarchs to normalize their sexual perversion with children, because then the next step would be Aldous Huxley in Brave New World, and he talks about children's sexuality and how wrong it is to prevent children from having access to one another, even at a very, very young age. This is in a Brave New World. Right.
And then Wilhelm Reich comes out promoting that same idea.
Right.
You know, and, you know, and I remember early on reading this crap and, you know, in my late 20s or early 30s or whatever, and thinking, you know, Is there something to this? And in hindsight, it's like, wow, holy crap. Back then I didn't know Wilhelm Reich was a part of the Frankfurt School.
Right, exactly.
And then you see it all in hindsight, and it all starts making sense what these guys were all selling. And the agenda, it's just like the agenda of promoting the psychedelics or the suggestogens as spiritual.
Yeah. And so you got Bentham, starting to normalize it. You next pick it up. Well, there's many points in between, but the next well-known one is Huxley. He talks about, there's no restriction at all on children having sex. And then you come to Kinsey, the degenerate, who then used the data, and which is basically descriptions of a raping of a child by a pederast as scientific data to then create a bogus collection of science, which was then used inside our government to create the new laws. I mean, this is what I've been looking into, is the relationship between Kinsey's bogus science, which is just absolutely disgusting. It is absolutely sickening. It's not even science. The guy should have been in prison. But anyway, how that was hand in hand with elements inside the government to create a whole new system of laws that basically, stopped the local community from having any kind of control over their sexual mores. These would all be determined by federal law, which of course basically said there wasn't any law, that do what thou wilt was the position of the federal government in terms of perversion. So then you now go into then the sex, drugs, and rock and roll stuff. You've got Ginsburg, and you have all of these promotions. So you see again the pedophilic descriptions and normalization of it is still moving forward. And then you come to Pizzagate, and it's like, my God, you can see the fruition of the project. They're keeping it secret, but they're making sure at the same time that it's just constantly being normalized. And you read these articles like in the New York Times where they're suggesting that it's not a crime.
Sure.
Right?
And you see these ads pop up on I forget whether it's BBC or somewhere on some article about this stuff, and they're trying to play it down. The same thing on New York Times website. Absolutely trying to play it down.
Yeah. So that what you're looking at is
and never mind, it's a predatory practice like rape. Next they'll be trying to say that rape is not, because what they do is they lure these kids in and then they trick them, use a bunch of psychobabble on them, make the kids feel guilty or threaten them that they'll tell their parents, etc. And then they'll say that it's not a crime that they're doing this stuff.
Right. So Pizzagate is really, what it's uncovering is absolutely tragic. It's the rape and murder of children. That's what that's what the information is suggesting. That's what's being suggested here by a very, very large body of evidence. But real investigation, meaning police style investigation, FBI investigation, is being thwarted. So until we get to that point, we're all we can do is just do more research. The citizens can only do just more and more research with the hope of creating the political will to do that. But we can see that with Pizzagate, you are looking at the reality of pedophilia. You see, they use, Jan, they use the propaganda version, right? But here you get to see that really it's a kind of destruction of the child. It isn't just sexuality. I mean, if you actually look at some of the, where some of the Pizzagate analysis goes, I mean, you're really talking about just using the child as a commodity.
Well, and you're destroying the innocence of the child as well, and then they're going to be corrupt and messed up from that, likely as well.
Well, here's the problem: is that they're probably murdered. You see, what I would suggest is that
all too often, not always.
Who knows? But yeah, of course. But but the thing is that underneath the Comet Pizza, you've got this question mark. People are saying, well, where are the kids? The kids don't come forward and talk about this, so we know it doesn't exist. Well, that would if it exists and the kids aren't coming forward and talking about it, it means that the kids are being
well, and that same area has more missing children than any place in the country. So.
Yeah, I've seen some other data on that. I'm not really sure what to know about it, but it doesn't. That's important, but it's just when you look at the
is that data in question now?
Yeah, it is, because the method of data collection in Washington, D.C. in that area is different than in other cities. And so it's just unclear at this point. I'll try. I'm doing more research in that. I'll give you some update when I get some clarity on it. But at this point, I don't know what to make of it. I still think that there's under any circumstances, I think there's an unusual cluster. It just may not be the one that we have seen as being so dramatic. So anyway, I don't know what's going on, but in terms of that particular data point, but I do know that the ability to harvest children is worldwide. And there are worldwide organizations that are supposed to be helping kids from these areas where, you have war and social chaos. And then, what happens to the children? Like, for example, in Haiti, where you had Laura Silsby, I believe her name was, and she was, caught by the Haitian government. She had all of these kids with her. Well, where's the documentation on all of the children that these organizations are supposedly helping?
Well, in a third world country like Haiti, they may have never had any documentation at all to begin with.
Well, there it is. And so that's why to me, the children that are really at risk are not just the kids in the U.S. And believe me, I think they are at risk, certainly. But in the third world, where you don't have even documentations, solid documentations of the existence of these kids, man, in those areas, if you have, pedophile harvesting organizations, who's to stop them from taking thousands of children, And so I'm not saying I have evidence of this. I'm saying, just based on the facts that are being presented, this is a concern. And so what we would want to have is sunshine put on the data that these organizations maintain. How many kids do they see? Where do the kids go? Where is the follow-up documentation? We need to be able to do longitudinal studies, of like a child over a period of time, to make sure that they're not just being, harvested and given to pedophiles. It's like almost so absurd a comment that it just, you have to scratch your head. But that's really where I'm at this point. I'm actually worried about this, and I really want these organizations to kind of give a better public presentation of their data, because I'm worried.
Yeah, well, for sure. Well, we have about 4 minutes left before we wrap up here, and I don't know what other topics we can cover. There's always tons to cover on this.
It's I'm sad that Steve didn't show up. Would have been great if he'd come. Hopefully, he can come next week, and we can really get into the summer of love and to what that all means. But in the meantime, I would hope that people continue to promote the citizen research into what's called Pizzagate.
Well, and all citizen research, what they're trying to label as fake news.
Right. And I would also say,
and expose the real fake news.
Right. Yeah, right. And that's the other thing, is that, if you have free time and a little bit of energy, I'd sure appreciate some help with alerting any representative that you have contact with about the danger to the First Amendment that Obama's legislation represents. If these kinds of laws can be controlled, if enough legislatures raise concerns about them, and then they are, they're affected by modification later on. And this happens typically because the public is outraged. So I think it's a good time for a little outrage from the public to try.
So you don't think we should just wait for and do nothing and wait until Trump shows up to fix everything?
Yeah, I think that's a bad idea, Jan. I don't know. I'm hopeful about Trump, but as you know, I'm a skeptic, and I think that they are pretty much in control of the political candidates. What we just experienced was a puppet show. the drama was created to make people not be able to see the strings on the puppets. But now you have the Trump puppet, the pussy-grabbing, racist white male who defeated the cultural Marxist feminists from outer space. I mean, these characters in my mind are just, they're just dramatic.
You forgot murdering.
Right. Yeah. Well, but the thing is so, I just don't think that that Trump's going to do much. I think that Obama should be the wake-up call. Everyone thought, well, now you've got this black guy with an Arabic name. I mean, you're going to have the bankers brought to justice and the wars are going to stop.
Yeah.
Here we are years later, no bankers gone to jail, and the wars just went round.
It actually went worse. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, it's like I have a friend of mine from Chicago, and black guy, and we were talking about Obama, and he goes, there isn't one community activist in Chicago. He says not one that would have rather invaded Afghanistan than put money into the inner city. Chicago had 80 shootings over the weekend. 80 shootings.
Yeah, well, and that's Obama's town, and of course they've got all of Obama's ridiculous gun laws there. So what happens is good people can't defend themselves. Criminals, Joe, no criminal has ever been affected by a gun law.
Well, I mean,
and the criminal gets the guns off the black market, and if when you take Chicago, Baltimore, Washington D.C., and Detroit out of the equation, which are the four most murderous cities in the United States, and all four have the most stringent gun laws. When you take those four cities out of the statistics, suddenly the United States becomes one of the safest countries in the world.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to get into the issue of the gun laws. That's an important point. But what I was trying to do is to show that Obama, who is supposed to help the inner city, has ended up with the inner city being even far worse than when he came on and when he was inaugurated. I'll give you one data point. Really good indicator of misery is heroin overdoses, right? Because heroin is a drug that really reflects how debased and how much misery is in a community. Under Obama, ODs by heroin went up 500%.
Really?
500%.
Well, in Woodstock, New York, heroin overdoses downtown have become a regular feature, for the, Friday, Saturday night crowds.
Well, on that note, Jan, I just think people should support you because you do absolutely wonderful research. How do they get a hold of you?
GnosticMedia.com, GNOSTIC media.com. You can reach me through the contact form on the website or at contact@GnosticMedia.com. Please support the show. Also support the network, CCN. We can't do it without them. And
absolutely,
how can the public, and we, the holiday has been tough this year. I appreciate everybody who has sent a donation. That's been really helpful. We ask everyone to please help and support. And Joe, how can people support you?
Go to CaesarsMessiah.com, and I now have a donate button, and I really want to thank the people who have been supporting me in the last couple of weeks. It's just been incredible. And also support Biggie and CCN. This network needs to exist. Sorry, folks, to always end with an advertisement, but we just need the money. So anyway.
Well, that's what you get for no commercials all throughout.
Exactly right.
You get us begging for money. So instead of selling our souls and having corporate underwriting, we come to you and we ask you to donate. So anyway, everyone.
See you next week, guys. Thank you very much.
Next week. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.
If we want to change the world, we must first change the media. Mainstream media exists for the purposes of indoctrination and manipulation of public perception. The world of free and independent media is growing, and with the upsurge in information now available in the public domain, it has never been easier to access free and independent media. The exploration of this information resulted in an experimental project which would provide a fully supported space for researchers, whistleblowers, and seekers of all kinds to express themselves and educate the world. On the 1st of January 2015, Conscious Consumer Network was launched to the world. Nobody thought we would make it this far, but CCN is the longest running free and independent media network of its kind. CCN is a unique collaboration of hearts and souls, bringing you information from different perspectives to educate and inform. Since we started CCN, we have had only one desire: the pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world, and this has not changed. Having overcome many challenges over the last 2 years, CCN is here to stay, and we've got great things lined up for 2017. Help keep CCN on the air by supporting the 2017 Network Support Fund.